We're putting out a sales tax. By this time, I'm hoping that everyone has, at least by word of mouth, heard what we're doing. And so, want to just kind of, every time I give this speech, it's just a little bit different audience there, but no one is crazy about a tax, of course, but unfortunately we live in a time where it takes money to make anything happen, and we are in a very competitive world with our kids competing with other districts and other schools who have more resources than we do. We are struggling financially. We're struggling with enrollment. Just to be honest, we're struggling with our budget at this time. We're struggling to keep students engaged, and one thing that we have learned since COVID is that a lot of kids can do things online. They can do school online. They can enroll in virtual academies, and they can do things online that allow them to travel or allow them to do homeschool. And a lot of kids come to school not because they love algebra or they love education, but they love all the things that school has to offer for them. So if you take a look at your handout here on the right hand side and look through like the athletics and the extracurriculars and the fine arts, those are the reasons why kids come to school for the most part. I got a wonderful education. I'm a proponent of Caldwell Parish schools. I'm a product of Caldwell Parish schools. I have a wonderful education from here, but the reason I am who I am today is because of those activities on the right-hand side. Softball, drill team, band, all of the club 4-H, all the things that I was a part of. And these are the things, the experiences that you can't get online, or you can't get from homeschool, or you can't get from anywhere else. And so those are the things that we really want to focus on with this 1-cent sales tax. So this discussion started back in the spring when our powerlifting team they started competing. And of course, powerlifting in Caldwell kind of comes and goes. It's like if you have a coach who's really involved in powerlifting, we have a powerlifting team. If you don't, then it kind of fades away. And I see a couple parents in here who have powerlifters, and so you know what I'm talking about. I was not a power lifter and did not have a brother who was a power lifter, but I have a son who thought he wanted to try it, and we tried it for 1 year, and I learned a lot being a parent of a power lifter, and it costs quite a bit of money to be a power lifter. Apparently there are these suits that you wear that cost quite a bit of money that you put on, and it blows my mind that they're actually legal to wear these suits that allow you to lift all this weight. And so as our kids are going and competing and they're wearing these suits, they're borrowing these suits from West Monroe High School. And that's embarrassing to me as their superintendent that we can't afford these suits and we're borrowing them from other schools. Thank God that, you know, West Monroe loaned them to us, but we're borrowing them, you know, in order to do this. In order to host a meet, in order to host a meet so that we can at least give our kids the experiences, we had to borrow equipment from other schools. I believe we borrowed from West Monroe, Cedar Creek. Yeah, we were borrowing from other schools to do that because that costs a lot of money. And so the coach came to me and he said, you know, I said, well, give me a cost of how much it is. And we're talking $30,000. We're talking, and I was like, that's a lot of money. And he said, well, you know, Washita Parish just passed a 1-cent sales tax. And I said, oh, they did? And he said, yes. And so I called the superintendent in Washita Parish and I said, tell me what y'all did. And he said, well, we just passed a 1-cent sales tax on capital improvements. So basically, we can spend it on whatever we want to. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, we're going to run out of projects before we ever run out of money. And I was like, oh, well, we live in 2 different worlds because that's not the world I live in. And so we started entertaining the idea of the 1-cent sales tax. Well, we're already at our cap as a district. We have 2 1-cent sales tax for the school board, and those are both dedicated to salaries and benefits for our employees. And so that was not the route to go. So then we started looking at a property tax. And of course that was like, oh, not another property tax, you know. And so we already have a couple of those for our millage, our operations and our maintenance. And of course that's how we did the renovation several years ago. But there did come the idea of an educational facilities improvement district. And that's what is on the left-hand side of your page. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what that is. An EFID is a board that is already in place in all 64 parishes. the school board has to actually appoint this board and enact it. And so that's what our school board decided to do, was let's appoint this board. Our actual EFID board is in the bottom corner of the left-hand side. It has 6 members. Maria Bass is the school board member who serves on this board. I serve on it as the superintendent, and then our business manager, David Saunier. And then we have 2 community representatives, Reggie Rockamore and Lauren Young, who both serve on this committee as well. They'll serve for 6 years, just so that we have some continuity, and they represent the community as a whole, and they can levy this tax along with our school board. They can't make any decisions that the school board can't, they have to work in tandem with each other. But so that we enacted this board, the board did, and then they can levy this tax, and they report directly to the school board. So this board was enacted to levy this tax. Now in the top left-hand corner, it kind of has some restrictions about what this sales tax can do. It's a 1-cent sales tax, and so when you think about 1 cent, it's 1 cent for every dollar that you spend. So if you spend $1, it's a penny. If you spend $10, it's 10 cents. Or if you spend $100, it's an extra dollar. It exempts your food and drug purchases. So when you go to the grocery store, it's not going to add another penny to your grocery bill. It is exempt for your prescription drugs. So if you go to, and I think this is meant to help families like your elderly who are on a fixed budget, so your food and your drug prescriptions are not affected with that. It's not forever like the other sales taxes that we have. It's a 20-year sales tax, but it's basically enacted to generate funding for long-term projects for facility improvements. It does not impact property taxes. There's been a lot of questions about that, but it does not. There's no way that it impacts your property taxes. The other thing about this is anybody who travels through here is going to pay it. If somebody stops and buys gas in Caldwell Parish, they're going to pay it. If someone stops and shops at Dollar General, they're going to pay for it. So it's anybody, it's equitable. Everybody who spends money is going to pay the 1 cent sales tax. And for our businesses, they just attribute it over. We're at a 10% sales tax right now, and y'all have done the research around us. Everyone else is at 10 to 12% right now. If you're going to Monroe, do y'all pay attention to how much you're spending? Yes. You're already spending that, 11 to 12% when you go to Sam's, when you go to Sterlington, when you go to Franklin Parish, when you go to LaSalle Parish, it's 10 to 12%. So we're already on the lower end there. So, and that's the thing, is everybody else is doing this, and we're like, okay, it's time for us to jump in and support our kids as well. So we decided, let's go ahead and move forward with this. Let's do something for our kids to support these programs. So if you look on the side there at all of these programs, athletics, extracurriculars, fine arts, we want to be sure that we're supporting everything outside of the regular classroom. We have a team of people at the central office who write grants for literacy, numeracy, career tech ed, special education, technology. We can write grants for all sorts of things, but there are no grants available for athletics. There are no grants available for clubs or extracurricular, for band, music. I mean, very few for arts or anything like that. So, and absolutely nothing for capital improvements. So this is it. This is the way to do it, is to say, you know what, if the community wants more for our kids and more for our experiences, we have to put it together and all come together to make this happen. So in deciding what we wanted to do, I have ideas, we have ideas, but we decided, let's go to the community, let's find out what do we really need, because a lot of the ideas come from our community, our parents, the people who are actually involved. So our first step was to call together our coaches, our principals, our teachers, our sponsors, and find out. So we put out a survey, and we received about 152 responses from the survey about what do our programs really need. So if you flip over to the second page, those responses came back. We put the data together, and overwhelmingly there were 2 items that came to our attention. The first was that people are tired of fundraising. Anybody want to give it amen?
Amen.
You know, and so it's like every time you turn around, there's another calendar going out. You know, buy my uniform or sponsor my day or doing. I've got twin 16-year-olds. You know, and every time I turn around, it's another fundraiser. It's another, and it takes money. I mean, uniforms cost money. Travel costs money. It costs money to go spend the night in a hotel in New Orleans. Back to powerlifting, you go back, and of course they made it to state on borrowed equipment, borrowed suits. But to go spend the night in New Orleans to compete at the state tournament, what do you have to do? You have to fundraise. And so, and I'm a part of those group meetings, and so I see those parents going off about, I'm going to ask for money, and I'm going to this bank, and I'm going here, and our banks are getting hit up one time after another, and our businesses are getting hit up one time after another, and parents don't like. Do any of you like going to ask for money? I hate going and asking for money. I hate asking for money. I don't always hate giving it. It's hard because every time you turn around, you're having to give money. Our businesses are so generous and they want to give, but it is exhausting, and they have a budget they're trying to maintain, and they don't want to say no to anybody. And so that to me was like, okay, you hear this over and over again. What if we could create a funding mechanism within this money to say every organization gets a startup amount at the beginning of every year? Can we reduce all the fundraising? No. There's no way to say we won't do any fundraising, but if we can give everybody, you don't have to start at zero every year, then we've at least started somewhere. And so in doing that, there are things we have to consider. Like, you've got some sports who have a gate. Football has the biggest gate. Everybody comes to the football games on Friday night, so they might not need as much money. Of course, they have to pay officials, they have to pay the gate workers, they have to pay all of the stuff that goes along with having a football game. And then you've got some like powerlifting. Of course, you did have that one meet. Cross country doesn't have any gate. Tennis doesn't have a gate. Y'all help me out with where some others. Golf does not have. Yeah, fishing doesn't have a. There are some that do not have. Now, band has the concession. You know, there are some who have booster clubs. Some that do not have booster clubs. But so you have to take all those things into account, whether you have a funding mechanism or not. Some of your clubs are like just school-based clubs who do things that are just school-based. But then you also have like your speech squad who go and they compete. And so if they're going and they're staying overnight in hotels to go compete in Lafayette, that costs money. But they don't have a way to make money other than selling boo bags, which is great, you know, and that provides something for kids to do. But how many boo bags do you have to sell to be able to put all your kids up in a hotel room for how many competitions do they go to?
3 or 4 years, they say like 2 or 3 nights.
Absolutely. So it just costs money. So you have to take all those things into account, that organization may need more money than, say, the student council who's just doing something at the school as a beautification project or something. So for easy math, I'll just say, let's take our band, okay? So if we put it into effect, a funding mechanism that said, right now we have currently 51 kids in the band, which is huge, it's growing. Every year we're growing and growing. What if we said $100 a kid at the beginning of the year? That would give them $5,100 to start with every single year. Next year, say you're up to 58 kids. And every year that you're growing, you have a startup fee a startup amount every year that you are. The more you grow, the more MFP money we're getting, so you have more kids involved, and that's what we're trying to do. So if we could do that, we could impact every kid in our district, because even down to our pre-K 3 and pre-K 4, we have art and music, right? How many kids take art in our pre-K and pre-K 4? They all do, okay? So if we could give a little bit of money for every student who takes art, every student who takes music, then you might have money for costumes or something for your productions that you put on. You can use this money however you choose to for those extra things, you know, that you want to do. So we can think outside the box about things that we're not necessarily funded for through our grants. Does that make sense? Then you get into like your robotics. Y'all, our robotics team, 2 years ago we didn't even have a STEM program. And then this past year our robotics team went to nationals. That costs a lot of money. We fortunately partnered with Louisiana Green Fuels and Hatch, who gave us a generous donation to go to Daytona Beach to compete. But when they got there, they're the only team who showed up with the boxed robot that came out of the box. Everybody else had aftermarket parts. Didn't even know that existed. But when they got there, you know, our kids are competing against kids who, I mean, they all came with their own robot. Our kids came with one robot. And so there's no reason why Caldwell kids can't have that same level playing field as everyone else. I want that for our kids. And when they're asking why don't we have, it all comes down to money, you know. So there are programs like that that are growing, and that is opening doors for our kids. Engineering, I'm not sure what fields y'all all work in, but I know engineering and robotics and coding hit somewhere in your field at some point. Opening doors for our kids. We want to make sure that we are making sure that Caldwell kids are on that same level playing field. This is the way we can do it. So that's the first thing that we can do, is allocate those funds across the board for all of our kids. Our business manager is thinking right now this sales tax would generate about $1.2 million a year over the course of 20 years. If we do that with the spreadsheet that we have going, with all the programs that we have lined out, we're thinking that about 10% would be used for that allocation part. So we've got 90% left with just that income to spend on some major capital improvements. And then so the first part, the first major project in this first proposal would be constructing a student activity center. And it's described at the bottom of page 2 and the next page. But this student activity center would be located between the junior high and the high school to service both campuses. And so one wing would be dedicated to STEAM, which is STEM, so your science, technology, robotics, art, and music. So choir, you'd have your robotics lab with all of the things and technology designed for that. Your art classes and your choir classes, which would open up the fine arts building to use all of those rooms for bands, because our band program is growing. I don't know if any of y'all were in band back in the day when we had the wind section over the junior high or the brass. We were all separated from, you know, that would allow us to be able to separate and grow that piece over in that area. But so one wing would be for STEAM, and then the other wing would be for an expanded weight room with updated equipment that is, you know, the rubber mats, all of the updated equipment that could be used for both junior high and high school boys and girls. Currently, all of them are fighting over the field house weight room. And if any of you have kids, you know, you may have the 6 a.m. workout, you may have the Monday at whatever time, whatever. Delinda and I can attest, when our girls were playing softball, we ended up having to pay for our own membership at Spartan Fitness because there was no time to get those softball girls in there. So it's an absolute necessity. And then with this robotics wing on this side, and this art and the music, and then you've got the weight room on this side with it too, you would have appropriate locker rooms and showers for both boys and girls. It's another part that we don't have. I learned this past year with our powerlifting team that our girls were actually changing clothes in the coaches' offices, which is not okay. They should have a place where they can change clothes as well. So by doing this, we'll be able to meet all those needs with that one building. I would love for it to be covered, so that in the weather they were actually walking under something from the junior high and then also from the high school, and have that together too. So novel idea there, I know, but you know, Caldwell strong, was that what Miss Wiles said?
Yes.
We braved the rain. We all did it, didn't we?
Whole other dimension.
A whole other dimension. But all that is explained there on the bottom of this page, and the second page is as much depth as we could come up with there. But that's a way that we thought with this first phase we could make that happen. And with 1.2 million a year, we think we could probably accomplish this in about 4 to 5 years. If our sales tax keeps booming like it is, we could possibly get done faster than that. And so the last page is, I put phase 2 possibilities because these were other items that were mentioned on the survey. They may or may not still be items when that first phase is over, because like I said, 2 years ago, we didn't even have a STEM program. So when this first project is done, these may or may not be needed anymore, because my hope, after talking, because I presented this at all 3 banks, and after talking with them, if we could alleviate the fundraising that they are constantly doing, we've talked about maybe setting up some grant programs that we could write for like major grants, that they would fund some of these possibilities through major grants. So some of these projects may even take place before the sales tax would have to get there. Does that make sense what I just said? Okay. So some of these may not even be necessary then, because they could take that fundraising money and do these projects. But some things that need to be taken care of are the track and field. The track materials are out there. They're here. It's supposed to be Saturday, but the rain is going to hold it off. But the track is going to be repaired. They owe it to us because they did a terrible job the first time. But the field needs to be repaired. There are the high jump, our state, what she got, second place in the state. She practices at Richwood High School. That's embarrassing because we don't have a high jump pit here. We need to fix that. We need to remedy that. There's no reason why that should be happening. We need proper drainage and all that for the field event areas. We absolutely need to update our ag shop and all of our blue collar trade expansions. Upgrades to our softball and baseball fields over there. Our band instruments, those cost a ton of money. But in order to be able to upgrade those things as well. Our marching band, all of our color guard, you know, all those backgrounds and stuff that they use when they march. We hand paint ours. When we go and compete with other schools, y'all, they have screen printed. It's like professionally done. That costs a lot of money to be able to do that. Locker rooms, changing areas for tennis, cheer, dance, the junior high. We really have a lot of work to do in that area for those programs. And on down to elementary school auditorium renovations and playgrounds and pavilions for all of our students, especially those with disabilities, and lighting. These were all items that were mentioned on the surveys that we want to get to. 20 years, whether you look, sometimes you look at it and you're like, that's a long time, and sometimes it's like, it's really not in the whole scheme of things. There's a lot of things that we can actually accomplish if we all just put a little bit of skin in the game for that. And so the possibilities are there. It's just a matter of, are we willing as a community to invest in our kids? And so the last thing I want to call your attention to is in that box in the bottom right hand corner, and that's the verbiage of the sales tax. We were very particular in the way that this is written, because I don't plan to be in this role in 20 years. And so we want to make sure that whoever is, that they still interpret it the way that the voters pass it. We want to make sure that this money is always used for our students, for the extras, for the extracurriculars, for the athletics, for the art, for the music, for all the things. And so it lays it out that it's a 1% sales tax. It exempts your food and your prescription drugs for 20 years, but it's dedicated and used to assist the Caldwell Parish School Board for constructing, improving, supporting, equipping, operating, and maintaining athletics and extracurricular programs and facilities to benefit the public school system within the district. So that's the exact verbiage on the ballot. I will say the election day is November the 15th. Early voting starts November 1st, which is a week from Saturday. So you can go to the courthouse November 1st through the 8th to vote there. That's probably the easiest way to do it, because you can go whenever you want to there. Election day is the 15th. It is the only thing on the ballot. So it's like you have to make a special trip to go do it, and I will tell you why it's the only thing on the ballot. And it's because in order to get through the process of the EFID, it was the first election that was available after we got through the process. The sad part about that is that we had to foot the whole bill for that, which was terrible because it does cost a lot of money to do it. We did talk about moving it to the spring election so that we could share the cost with the state. But we found out that's when the governor's putting all the amendments on there, and there's about 20 amendments. And have y'all ever go vote when there's 20 amendments? What do you do? No, yeah. So, and they said voter fatigue is a real thing, and so yes, you have less skin in the game, but you're not going to pass it. And so we had to decide whether we're going to put some skin in the game and try to pass this, or less skin in the game and probably lose. And we decided that we were going to just go full force. Let's make this work and do what we can to try to get the word out there and educate people, be transparent with everybody, to ask questions. So at this time, if you have any questions, the floor is open. No, I thought you raised your hand. Nobody ever asked me any questions.
Let them know when the money will be available.
Oh, that's great. Yes. Okay. So, election would be November the 15th. We would canvass the results in January, which means we would start assessing the tax in April, which means that the money starts being collected in May or June. So, as soon as we start collecting, then we would start doling it out next school year. So these allocations would start next school year, and then we begin the whole process of doing the we start building. When we start building immediately. So I say this, my kids are sophomores right now, so they'll get a little bit of this benefit, but they won't like see the major. Who's really going to benefit from this are my grandkids. You know, and I don't want my grandkids to have to move off to experience what everybody else is. And the truth of the matter is people are moving. They're moving down the road because they've got shiny, bright, you know, huge weight rooms and all these facilities. And I don't want my family to have to move off. I want my grandkids to stay here. I want my kid. I love growing up here. I love being a part of this, and I want to bring them back. We have the possibility and the hope when, I say when, Louisiana Green Fuels comes, I don't want people to live in Monroe and commute to work there. I want them to come be a part of Caldwell. I want them to live here and go to church with us and be a part of our programs. And the only way to do that is to have facilities that allow us to compete with the surrounding districts, allow us to attract teachers and attract coaches and attract people to want to be here and a part of our programs. Other people are doing it because they're investing. They've passed the taxes, and that's what it's going to take is a community believing in our kids. Our kids aren't 18. They can't vote. So they're depending on us to do it. And they're depending on me in this position to get out and spread the word. This whole fall has been me having this spill with everybody. So that's why we are doing this video here, is to try to get the word out and share. On the front there, you'll see there's the website here. We've got a whole tab that's marked, and if you click on information on the website, there's a whole tab that's the EFID sales tax, and everything that we have put out that explains this is on that tab, even so much as our budget, because we've adopted a negative budget for 4 years now. We're struggling. We had to go through some cuts last year, and we're trying to get to a positive budget. But the problem is when you're not bringing enough money to pay your bills, you have to make cuts, and that's a terrible place to be in. It is. This money's not going to plug those holes, and I'm very particular about that. This money is for the extra. It's not to cover general fund deficits. That's my job. That's our board's job, is to make sure that we can do that. But we have to attract people to come. And this, I believe, the board believes, this is the way to attract people to come, is to make it enticing to bring people back. So, thank you for that question. Anything else? If you have any questions, my email is nmccann@caldwell.edu. Look me up on Facebook Messenger. Everybody else does. You could probably even get my cell phone number from somebody. People don't mind giving that out either. So anyway, thank you all very much. Spread the word. If you hear people talking about it, share this. Tell them, no, this is what I heard. This is what it really is. So, because you're going to hear, I find there are people who are like, no taxes, no taxes. And then you got people who are like, why wouldn't I? It's 1 penny. You're not even going to notice that.